We're talking Dallas Cowboys trades today, and there's a lot to unpack. First up, let's dive into what Jerry Jones recently said about the Cowboys possibly making a move before the deadline. We'll also take a closer look at Adam Schefter's list of potential trade candidates and discuss which names could actually make sense for Dallas right now. But before we get into it, I want to hear from you, the real fans. Do you want to see the Cowboys buy at the trade deadline or stand pat? Drop your answer in the comments, Y for yes, N for no. And hey, while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Make sure to hit that bell icon so you never miss a single update on America's team. Now, back to Jerry Jones. Once again, he's expressed some interest in making a deal, but as always, he made it clear that the Cowboys prefer when the other team calls first. Here's what Jerry had to say: if there's a trade to help the defense, we're in position to make that trade. That doesn't mean we're going to make one, but we've built flexibility into our roster and cap to give us options this season and beyond. I don't have a trade in mind right now, it just depends if someone calls. That's classic Jerry, nothing surprising there. He's been saying similar things for months now. Ever since the Micah Parsons trade rumors started swirling, Jones has kept the same stance: we've got the pieces if the right deal comes along. But let's be real, there's no sign of anything imminent right now. Could that change in a week or two? Absolutely. If the Cowboys drop their next couple of games, the tone inside that building could shift fast. Now, let's be real for a second, the Cowboys might want to make a move, but that doesn't mean they will. Jerry and the front office tend to take the long-term approach. It's the smart, steady path, but sometimes it feels like Jerry's just tossing bait in the water, waiting to see if any team bites first. The Cowboys seem to believe that if they're the ones making calls, they lose leverage. Sure, there's some truth to that, but in today's NFL, you can't always wait for opportunity to knock. Sometimes, you've got to make the call yourself and create it. That aggressive mindset is something Dallas has been hesitant to embrace when it comes to trades. So here's the question for all of you watching: will the Cowboys actually make a move before the trade deadline? Comment 1 for yes, 0 for no. I want to see what you think down below. Now, let's talk about what Adam Schefter laid out earlier this week on ESPN. He mentioned over 30 trade candidates across the league, and said we could see a dozen or more deals go down before the deadline. We're going to focus on the names that could realistically fit with the Cowboys, and skip over the ones that just don't make sense for Dallas. Let's start position by position, beginning with the running backs. We'll skip quarterbacks for now, since that's clearly not a need for Dallas. First up, Breece Hall from the New York Jets. The Cowboys' run game struggled last week. Part of that was the offensive line, but adding a dynamic back like Hall could spark things up. Now, there's been some talk that the Jets might be open to dealing him, especially if their season continues to spiral. At 0-6, it wouldn't be shocking if they started moving players who aren't part of their long-term plans. However, with Braylon Allen's recent injury, that might make the Jets more hesitant to move Hall. And even if he's available, the cost for Dallas might be steep, especially since Javonte Williams has been performing well in Denver, possibly lowering the market for running backs overall. Next up, let's talk about Alvin Kamara. The name alone grabs attention, but the truth is, Kamara just hasn't been the same player we remember from his prime years in New Orleans. Last season, he showed flashes of his old self. His yards per carry climbed back over 4.1 for the first time in a while, but he's cooled off again since then. With Kendre Miller earning more touches and the Saints looking ahead to their future, Kamara's role is slowly fading. Now, could he help Dallas? Maybe, but there's a big catch: he'd likely be a short-term rental, and that doesn't really fit where this Cowboys roster is right now. They're building toward sustained success, not quick fixes. Another intriguing name is Jaylen Wright from the Miami Dolphins, a player I personally thought Dallas should have considered coming out of Tennessee. He's got real burst, that home run speed every team wants, but so far in Miami, he's been stuck behind Devon Achane and Ollie Gordon too. Right now, Wright's more of a long-term investment than an immediate upgrade, which could make him a better target after the season. And besides, the Cowboys still want to see what they've got in Jaden Blue, who's shown flashes of power after contact even when the box score doesn't tell the full story. Lastly, there's Devin Singletary, a name that's floated around for a few years now. He's experienced, dependable, and knows how to move the chains. But at this stage, he's more of a stopgap than a solution. He's already been surpassed in Houston by younger backs like Tyron Tracy Jr. and Kemska Tebow, and that says a lot. Unless a serious injury shakes things up, Dallas probably isn't in the market for a veteran rental like Singletary. The bottom line? The Cowboys' running back room doesn't need a temporary patch, it needs a spark, a long-term difference maker. And so far, none of these trade options seem to check that box. Alright, now let's flip to the defensive side of the ball, because that's where things could get really interesting. When you look at this Cowboys defense, one thing stands out, the interior line. Right now, Jonathan Hankins and Motzie Smith have been solid, but not dominant. And while the team's invested heavily in young talent, they still haven't found that consistent interior presence who can truly collapse the pocket. That brings us to a few potential trade names worth watching. First up, Shelby Harris. He's bounced around the league, a real journeyman, but he's still producing. This year with Cleveland, he's racked up multiple tackles for loss and continues to be one of those gritty veterans who just knows how to disrupt plays. Then there's Malik Collins, another former Cowboy who's been playing really well for the Browns. Yeah, it stings seeing ex-Cowboys thriving elsewhere, doesn't it? But the truth is, Collins has been a steady interior force, and a reunion wouldn't be the worst idea if the price was right. Still, there's a big question, should Dallas even go after a veteran defensive tackle? They've already got a rotation full of young guys, and sometimes it's better to let that group develop rather than rent another short-term fix. This front office knows that, and they're not in a buy now, pay later mode. Now, when it comes to the edge rushers, one name jumps out, Trey Hendrickson. He's one of the most relentless pass rushers in the NFL. But he's also been dealing with a back injury, and it's unclear whether he'll even suit up against Pittsburgh this week. If he's healthy and available, he'd be a massive addition, but again, that's a big if. For now, the Cowboys seem content to rely on what they've built, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and their deep rotation, rather than making a desperate move for a short-term piece. When it comes to Trey Hendrickson, his situation is still up in the air. There's a real chance the Bengals hold on to him, especially if they string together a couple of wins before the deadline. But if they stumble, Cincinnati could easily pivot and decide it's time to sell. The issue for Dallas is the price. Hendrickson isn't cheap, both in contract and in trade value. It would probably take at least a second-round pick, and that's a steep price for a player who might end up being a short-term rental. The Cowboys can't afford to throw away premium draft capital unless it's for someone who fits their long-term plans, and right now, Hendrickson doesn't quite check that box. Next on the radar is Keion White from the New England Patriots. It's been a rough season for him. After showing promise in 2024, he's struggled to stay healthy and has fallen out of favor with the new coaching staff in Foxborough. White has the size and strength to be that two-way edge defender, a guy who can set the edge and get after the quarterback, but his regression this season makes him more of a gamble than a guaranteed upgrade. The Cowboys already have depth at the position. What they need is another difference maker, not just another rotational piece. Then there's the veteran option, Cameron Jordan of the New Orleans Saints. Now, his resume speaks for itself, multiple Pro Bowls, years of dominance, leadership, toughness. But at this point in his career, Jordan's production has dipped. He's got 2.5 sacks through 6 games this season, solid, but not the same force he once was. He's also made it clear he wants to retire a Saint, and the same goes for Alvin Kamara. If those guys don't want to move, it's hard to see New Orleans forcing it. For the Cowboys, chasing big names only makes sense if they actually move the needle. And right now, none of these potential trades feel like the kind of deal that truly changes their Super Bowl equation. Another name from Adam Schefter's trade list is Anfernee Jennings of the New England Patriots. He's had some solid moments in the past, good against the run, capable of making plays behind the line of scrimmage, but this year, he's been quiet with only a handful of tackles. Now, if the Cowboys were shifting to more 4-3 under or 3-4 hybrid looks, Jennings could technically fit as that stand-up edge linebacker. But let's be honest, if Dallas is going to make a trade, it shouldn't be for a guy. It should be for a dude. And right now, Jennings isn't that dude. If we're talking about players who are, or at least could be, then names like Bradley Chubb and Jaylen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins come to mind. Both of them have proven potential to be game wreckers when healthy and locked in. Chubb has been the more productive of the two this season, already stacking up 4 sacks and plenty of pressures. But his contract is massive, and that's where things get tricky. For Dallas, taking on that deal would mean committing big money for multiple seasons. And while it would lock in another premier edge rusher next to Micah Parsons, it would also limit future flexibility. As for Jaylen Phillips, he might actually be the more realistic trade candidate. Miami already paid Chubb, and with Chop Robinson ready for more snaps, Phillips could become the odd man out. He's been close on several plays this season, the pressures are there, even if the sack totals don't show it yet. If he gets moved and finds the right scheme, you could easily see him put up 5, maybe even 6 sacks down the stretch. But here's the catch, Phillips is set to hit free agency soon. So if Dallas were to trade for him, it wouldn't make sense unless they were ready to sign him to a long-term deal right away. And with the franchise tag likely being reserved for someone like George Pickens or another key player down the line, that decision would carry serious cap implications. In short, the Cowboys can't afford to chase names, they need impact. And every potential deal must balance immediate help with long-term vision. Alright, time for a little fun. If you could pick just one of these guys to trade for, who would it be? Type BC for Bradley Chubb or JP for Jaylen Phillips down in the comments. I'm curious where Cowboys Nation stands on that one. Now, shifting gears, the Tennessee Titans are shaping up to be one of the clear sellers this trade season after parting ways with their head coach. A couple of names from their roster, Arden Key and Draymond Jones, could draw interest. Both players fit that depth pass rusher mold, the kind of rotational piece contenders often add for an extra spark late in the year. But honestly, that's not what Dallas needs right now. They don't need another third or fourth edge guy, they need impact players who can change games. Speaking of impact, one name that really intrigues me is Rick Woolen from Seattle. He's a freak athlete, long, fast, and tailor-made for Dan Quinn's defensive philosophy. But his situation is complicated. Woolen's been benched recently, and there are questions about his long-term contract expectations. He wants a big deal, but the way things are trending, he might need to prove himself again before he gets it. If the Cowboys believe they can help him reset and return to form, it could be a sneaky smart move, though it depends on how they view their cornerback room going forward. Remember, Trayvon Diggs is working his way back from injury, and Darren Bland has been phenomenal this season. So do you ride it out with those two and reassess in free agency? Or do you take a swing now on a high-upside player like Woolen? Another corner worth mentioning, Roger McCreary from Tennessee. I've always liked his game. He's a bit undersized and doesn't fit the typical Dallas corner profile, short arms, compact frame, but he's tough, physical, and versatile. He can play inside or outside, and he's just one of those gritty defenders who always finds a way to make plays. Still, historically, that's not the kind of corner the Cowboys tend to pursue. Now, let's move to the safeties, and this is where things get really interesting. Kyle Duggar from New England might actually be available. After a strong 2023 season, he's been pushed into more of a rotational role this year. His contract situation is messy, and that's likely why the Patriots would even consider moving him. But make no mistake, Duggar's still a talented, hard-hitting safety who could instantly upgrade Dallas's secondary. The only question is whether the Cowboys are willing to pay for that kind of move right now. I just don't know if the cost, contractually, makes a lot of sense for Dallas right now. Then there's Tony Adams, the Jets' safety. He might be available, mostly because the Jets are struggling and probably want to get Malachi more playing time. But honestly, I don't think Adams moves the needle much. Even if he's slightly better than what you already have, he's not under contract long-term, and that kind of minimal upgrade just doesn't justify the trade. Because let's be real, Jerry keeps saying this team is just a few small things away. I don't think that's true. This roster has real schematic issues on the back end, and just as many personnel problems up front. We'll definitely dive deeper into all of that, including some of those Cowboys trade rumors and the George Pickens talk, in future breakdowns. So, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Before we wrap, let's go rapid fire through the rest of the names Schefter mentioned, and why they don't make sense for Dallas right now. You're not trading for a quarterback. You don't need Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson. The Saints' top receivers, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, even Michael Thomas, were all listed, but wide receiver isn't a need. You're getting CeeDee Lamb and Kavontae Turpin back healthy, and that'll boost your offense on its own. Same goes for names like Jacoby Myers, Allen Lazard, or Tyler Lockett, good players, but unnecessary right now. Tight ends? Sure, David Njoku, Mark Andrews, and Chigozie Okonkwo are better than Luke Schoonmaker, but again, not a position you give up draft assets to upgrade mid-season. An offensive line? You're finally getting healthier there, too. So while there are some talented linemen floating around the trade market, it just doesn't make sense to buy right now. That said, keep an eye on Evan Neal in free agency next offseason. He could be an interesting reclamation project if the Cowboys believe they can rebuild his confidence and technique.